So I was born in New York City, and when I was growing up, when I was about 8 years old, my mom, who had stopped working when I was little, decided to go back to work. And her friend, who was the lawyer for Jim Henson, asked if she would like to answer the fan mail for the Muppets. Now, the Muppets at this point appeared really only on Sesame Street, and there wasn't a great deal of fan mail. Not many people wrote to Oscar the Grouch and Big Bird and Ernie and Bert. Partly also, I think, because this is now about 1975, that kind of culture of interacting with creatures, puppets, literary creations that you admired didn't really exist then. So this was kind of pin money, you know. And then in 1977, The Muppet Show appeared on television, of course, against all odds. Nobody thought there could be a puppet show for grown-ups. None of the American networks wanted to make it, so it was made over here in England, always. And then my mom's job became quite a lot bigger. Because The Muppet Show, soon after it started in 1977, became the most successful show in the history of television, pretty much up until now, in terms of the countries that it was watched in, and the number of people who watched it. And there was no email in those days. There were no websites. People wrote letters, and all of those letters came to my parents' small two-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. Sacks and sacks and sacks of letters. And my father had to give up his job in order to help my mother develop a system to answer these letters. And indeed, that was my first job, also pitching in, opening hundreds and thousands of envelopes, sorting them into categories: people who wanted to be puppeteers, people who wanted to get Miss Piggy's autograph or Kermit the Frog's autograph. I had to sign those, I have to say. I hope none of you are too disillusioned, because I learned those signatures. If you wrote or knew someone, it might have been me, the 10, 11, 12-year-old me, signing those pictures, sending them out. And my parents together developed a sequence of about kind of 25 form letters that would be sent off to different people asking various things. But probably there were about between 5 and 10 letters every month. And my parents did this for years and years, mainly my mom. There were between 5 and 10 letters that could not be answered by a form letter. And my mother would answer them on her IBM Selectric typewriter and send the answers out. And although, why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because although I was always a reader, and my mother was a reader, and my father was a reader, not all readers become writers. And I do feel profoundly that seeing how my mother's words and the words of strangers who we'd never met, they came into our house, my mother wrote back to people, these words went out into the world. I really do feel that this profoundly influenced the way that I think about how words can be the most significant ways, one of the most significant ways that we interact with other people. And those words can come in all different shapes and in many kinds of voices. They may be letters, like my mother wrote. They may be poems, they may be novels, they may be spoken. But when I think about my beginnings as a writer, you know, as I get older, I really do come back to those sacks and sacks of letters. And it's funny to me because, of course, in my years as literary editor of the Times, I too received sacks of books this time. Those great big gray Royal Mail sacks of books would come into my office, probably about 3 or 4 of them a day, and I would have to go through them and choose what books the paper reviewed. Opening those, going through those sacks, as I think my mother felt about her sacks, was never a chore. It was always joy.